Today we're going to dive into an official report and see what the numbers really tell us. And right off the bat, we're faced with a puzzle. How can the total number of critical incident reports be going up while a lot of the charts actually make it look like things are getting better? Let's unpack that. So here's the puzzle in black and white. On one hand, you see the raw number of reports is climbing, but on the other hand, the percentage of people with reports is actually falling. This right here is the contradiction we're going to figure out. Okay, first things first, let's get a really crucial distinction out of the way. The report tracks something called incident reports. Now, these are just reports that have been filed. It's not the same thing as a confirmed incident. And get this, a single situation can actually trigger multiple reports. You got to keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this.
So how can both of these trends be true at the same time? Well, the answer is in the math. The numbers behind the percentages. And it all boils down to one simple idea, the denominator.
Just take a look at the numbers here. The total group of eligible individuals, that's the pool of people we're measuring, it grew by over 8,000 people. Yeah, incident reports went up too, but just not as fast. And that, right there, is how the percentage of people with reports can drop from over 12% down to 10%, even while the actual count of incidents was going up. This is the key takeaway, the one thing to remember from all this. Counts can rise while percentages fall. If that total group you're measuring against, the denominator, grows faster than the number of reports, the percentage will always go down. And this can be a real problem because it can hide a growing workload and give you this false sense that everything's improving.
Which of course brings us to the million-dollar question, who exactly is being counted as eligible? Is it literally anyone who meets the criteria, or is it only the people who are actively getting services? You see, without a crystal-clear public definition, these percentage charts become almost impossible to interpret correctly.
And this fuzziness around definitions, well, it just creates more confusion, especially when you start comparing different numbers from the very same organization. Let's look at a quick example.
So for instance, the number of people in something called home sharing only grew by 146 people. It's so important to remember that the eligible population and the home sharing population are two totally different groups. They're measured in different ways. You're comparing apples and oranges here. And here's where it gets really disconnected. A public website says the eligible population grew by 46%, but the report's own data, it calculates out to a 38.5% growth. I mean, you can see how this kind of thing would lead to some understandable public confusion. That's a gap of 7.5 percentage points. Look, the issue here isn't about pointing fingers, it's just about clarity. Without an official note explaining why, maybe they use different timeframes or counting methods, the public has no way to make these two numbers line up. And then there's another term they use, served. But this just adds another layer of fog. What does served actually mean? And how does it relate to being eligible? Without those precise definitions, you can have the cleanest looking chart in the world, and it can still be deeply misleading. Okay, now for a really crucial part of this story. So far, we've been looking at the data that's in the report. But the real issue, the bigger issue, might just be the data that isn't. There's a whole other layer of information that the public just never gets to see. So, the numbers we've been talking about, they're for what's called reportable critical incidents. Think of these as events that cross a certain high threshold, a line that says, okay, this has to be reported upwards and put into the public summaries. But right underneath that, there's a hidden layer. Service providers also keep internal logs of non-reportable incidents. These are events that don't quite meet that high threshold, but they're still being tracked. And you know what? These can be incredibly important early warning signals. So why does this matter? Well, it means the public is only ever seeing the tip of the iceberg, just the incidents that blow up and become critical. We have no way to see that internal layer altogether, so we can't see the full picture of what's happening or spot trends in those early warning signs. All right, finally, let's look at how one specific statement in the report just creates this huge gap when it comes to accountability. So the report says that many reports are connected to a limited number of unique individuals. And, on the surface, that sounds totally reasonable, right? But the second you read that, you have to ask, wait a minute, how limited is limited? Are we talking about 10 people, 100, 500? Without a number, that statement is basically impossible to evaluate. And this is where accountability just falls apart. The report doesn't tell us how big this group is, it doesn't say what's being done to help them, and this is the most important part. It doesn't say whether the repeat incidents are actually going down after they intervene. We have no way of knowing if anything is actually improving for this group.
So, what does this all mean? Well, it means we really need a better way to think about public accountability, and there's a pretty simple framework we can use.
Let's call it the accountability chain. It's simple. It starts with a signal. That's an incident getting logged. That signal should lead to an action, an intervention of some kind, and that action has to have a measurable result. For the public to really trust that things are getting better, this entire chain, from start to finish, has to be transparent.
So, let's wrap up with the key takeaways. First, always remember that falling percentages don't automatically mean things are better. They can be hiding a growing workload. Second, without clear definitions, it's pretty much impossible for the public to verify anything. And third, real accountability means we need to see not just the big public outcomes, but those internal warning signals too.
And all of this leaves us with one final question. It's not just about reading the charts we're given. It's about asking for the ones we actually need. What information really needs to be defined, published, and measured so that the public can independently verify that things are actually getting better?